guys, welcome back to Behind the Bikini. We are on episode 102. So we are in the triple digits, rolling right along, and we have our co-host back. She's back looking like herself again. So welcome back, Jordan.
Thank
Um, Before we get into today's topic, of course, like, comment, subscribe, hit the buttons wherever they are on your devices. And today we're going to talk a little bit about some things that we feel like could be good ideas to help kind of boost the sport, increase the revenue, increase the athlete experience, increase the fan experience, and just do things that are a little bit out of the box. But before we get into that, where are you right now?
I am in Tahoe.
So this was the show that kind of started the podcast all together in the first place. So
It is. It is my happy
yeah,
place.
yeah. So you're not competing this weekend, obviously, but do you have any of your own clients that are competing this weekend?
Yep. I have Nikki competing in the pro show this weekend, and then two NPC athletes, and then I'm staff on site for Fit Body. So here taking care of all the athletes this weekend. I think we have about 15 or 20 athletes here. So
Okay. Are they doing the whole little photo shoot thing afterwards, everything like they did?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. So the top five of the IFBB show and then the overall winners from the NPC are invited out on Sunday. And this year they rented a massive yacht and they're going to be doing the photo shoot out there, which is like the best part of the weekend, being able to get basically like a free trip on Lake Tahoe. It's beautiful. It's so much fun. So it's a big like caveat to the show for sure.
Hmm. I think we need more stuff like that, like just in general when it comes to shows, like things that keep us wanting to go back to them, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Something back to the athletes is always really cool. And Chris always keeps that, center and forward as he's one of my favorite promoters for that reason.
yeah. Yeah. So that's actually something I'm going to mention too when we get into our topic for today. But you're officially an Olympia prep too.
I am. Yeah, we're digging in Olympia prep now. We just did a refeed last night. I was supposed to have a refeed on Sunday, but I had a horrible travel day.
Mm.
Horrific. So I wasn't able to get my refeed in. So we ended up doing last night at Hell's Kitchen. We usually do Hell's Kitchen out here post show. So it was cool. We were able to go to dinner last night and actually ended up dropping weight. So clearly needed the refeed. And yeah, we're just a few pounds off right now. We're like 4 or 5 pounds off from where we want to be. We're slowly ticking down. Just trying to balance all this travel right now. I just need to get through North Americans and I can kind of settle in and be home.
Yeah. Well, that's the crazy part. Like I've stayed home quite a bit more this year than I typically do, but I'm watching you travel like literally every single week, and I'm like, I kind of don't miss that.
It's been my life for 3 years. It's a part of the
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do it, and like I said, some days I don't know either. But this is my life.
Yeah.
I just coach. I will be there and supporting my athletes. So if it's important to you, figure it out. You find a way.
That's right. That's right.
I'd just like to take a moment to welcome our new channel partners, Prozis. If you're unfamiliar with them, go ahead and go down into my description box now, click on the link, go check out their site. They are the leading supplement sports nutrition company based out of Portugal, been around for 17 years. You might be asking what makes Prozis unique? Well, everything that they make is made in-house or with trusted partners. They have to go through rigorous testing in Portugal in order to even get any products on the market. So what you're going to find really high quality, pure supplementation. And one of the biggest things for me is I have some GI issues. So being able to eat some of these more healthy protein treats and things like that and not having gut issues, worth its weight in gold. Go check them out. Click on the link in my description box below. Use the code CUTIES10 to get all of your discounts and even some special surprises. They're always putting up some amazing promotions. Let them know that I sent you and let me know what you think. Thanks again for watching and thank you for supporting our channel. Now, go optimize your own athletic abilities and check out Prozis.com.
Yeah, so that's we're literally 2 months out from the Olympia.
Yeah. Yep. We're getting really, really close.
Yeah, it's crazy how quickly the year has gone by. That's the first thing, and how quickly it's coming up. It's just like, and I mentioned this before. I'm like, I just feel like I'm not seeing a whole lot of coverage from the Olympia right now. Even like the Olympia crew itself, they're not doing a whole lot of anything. Like even this weekend right now is the Masters Olympia, and I'm not seeing any coverage for that either. Like I don't know what's going on exactly.
Yeah, it is. It is strange. I did notice that not a lot of people are kind of talking about their preps. I know for me, Nikki and I planned on my YouTube series coming out about 10 weeks out, and doing, our weekly drops. the challenge for me is with how much I'm traveling right now. I really don't have any content. It's like how
Yeah.
many times do you guys want to see me sitting in a hotel room, checking in athletes and trying to squeeze in, cardio sessions here and there. It's not really a lot. Now I know that's not the typical bikini athlete right now, so I'm not really sure why, there's not a lot of, social media presence and stuff right now. I do know, like, for me personally, like, the more content that I, put out there, obviously the more you're putting yourself out there, so I'm not sure if people are just, more of protecting themselves, and it's just really hard right now with, the Reddit warriors and things like that. We're kind of expected as top athletes to, give so much, and then we're judged and critiqued on it, so it almost makes you want to post less. I
Yeah.
know I've felt that way significantly. So sometimes, like, our preps are for us and for us only, and the fans will see it when the time comes. But it is a shift that I've seen this year. They the Olympia office put out the date of the Olympia extremely late, so like there was a lot of question of like when the Olympia was going to be. And then, just like you were saying, Sean, like there hasn't really been like a lot of hype, going into the show. So I'm not really sure if we're going to see a shift on that, but I definitely have noticed that there's like a lack of like media right now.
Yeah. And one thing I mentioned yesterday too, I put up a reel about this. It's like there's so many vacant crowns. You would think that they would be taking advantage of that. Like, who could be the one coming in to take the crown? Because because Sydney Gillen, she retired. Sebum, he retired. Fitness is really up in the air because the major contenders are all out. Those kinds of things. And I'm just like, bikini. Most of the majority of the top five, they're not competing anymore. Like Jen's not doing as far as we know. Issa just dropped. Like Angelica's not competing anymore. So it's like you would think they'd be trying to hype this a little bit more, like who's going to be up in that spot now. And actually, when Angelica said something on my reel, she's like, "It's because I'm not competing." I said, "Well," I'm like, "You laugh." I'm like, "But honestly, that's part of it." I'm like, some of the people that we followed for years are no longer competing this year. Sebum's a huge influence in this sport, and he's not competing. So it's like, all right, so who's taking his place? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I thought that would really kind of push more of the hype, because there are so
Right.
many kind of open spots, right?
Yeah.
There's three theoretically open spots in the top 10 for bikini this year. Missy Trescott, who is usually the crown for fitness, is moving over to figure. She's actually making her debut this weekend in figure, so like that will be very interesting. Sebum obviously being out, Sid being out, there's going to be a lot of shifts going on. So maybe we just need to get a little bit closer to time. Obviously those top athletes too, they're not really competing much right now. So it's like hard to kind of create hype when you don't know what that athlete looks like.
Correct.
And that's something too that I've really noticed is like the top Olympians right now, like they're coming out in the early part of the season and then they're shutting it down and coming out closer to the Olympia. So like we're not seeing them on stage and kind of battling for those top spots.
Yep.
But we say it every year. It's going to be a very interesting Olympia. I think this year's Olympia is going to be just as interesting. They are all interesting in their own way, but especially with bikini, like with those three spots being open, like it's going to be a question of like who from, that 11 to 15 spot is going to be able to shift up, or some of these newer pros that have come out in, one pro shows this year, like where are they going to stack up to?
Yeah. And you bring up a good point. Like, we haven't seen Laura Lee at all year. Ashley just started competing again. We really haven't seen much of like Ashlyn. We haven't seen Jasmine at all. We haven't seen a lot of the top 10. A lot of the top 10 have not competed at all this year. It's like they competed enough to get qualified, and that's it.
Yeah, like Evie, she came out the first half of the season super, super strong. And now, she's, still, in her little improvement season. So it's like all of these athletes, came out and now they're just getting better right now in silence, so, well, hopefully anyway, so we're probably going to see them show up and they're going to be improved or maybe not, so obviously that's going to, affect it. And on that day of the Olympia, that's what's judged, that's the criteria. So obviously it's about, how much did they improve since the last time they were on stage, and then how did they peak, and all of those factors as well.
Yeah. So that kind of can lead us into, what else can we do in order to increase the sport in general? Because as you know, I mean, you've been to shows all year this year, the athlete numbers are down. Show numbers are down, like just in general. So, with Fit Model coming in, it hasn't been like an insurgence of new people. It's been girls going down to Fit Model. So it's not bringing in new people like I think they thought it was going to. So what can we do in order to make this sport grow again? And what got me thinking about this more than anything else is just all the negative hype that's on social media all the time. We've talked about it here on the podcast and things like that. There's just so much negativity. It's like, why are you guys freaking so bitter about shit? You know what I mean? Like the sport has to grow and has to evolve, and anytime I think change is uncomfortable and people don't like it. And so that's where the negative backlash comes from. Um, and actually, I saw it was just a repost from a I think it was a YouTube interview or something like that yesterday with Kevin Levrone. So Kevin is one of the old guard. He's one of the older bodybuilders out there. And usually those guys are really negative towards changes in the sport. And he basically was saying, no, listen, the sport has grown. Like, what are you supposed to do? They were talking about giving out pro cards and stuff like that. If you want more people, you got to give out more pro cards. You got to give out more things to go after. You know what I mean? If you want to increase the revenue, if you want to increase the sport, if you want to increase the number of athletes, you have to give them more reasons to show up. You can't keep it the way it was when it was back in the 70s. You know what I mean? So, that was the first time I've seen somebody from that era come out and like talk like that. So I'm going to be honest with you. I feel like the negativity that comes from people like in that era, it really hurts the sport. I think it really hurts the sport a lot because those are the people that, like we've talked about before, those of us coming into it look up to. So when you're talking so shitty about the sport that we are trying to love, I mean, it affects everything.
Yeah, because they were essentially the starting athletes of bodybuilding. We
Right.
all idolize, those beginning athletes that kind of, forged the way for us. So if one of them comes out and, says they don't agree with something or they don't like something, it's going to make people question and turn their head. Um, and I agree with that. Are there a lot more pro cards given out in this time? Yeah, absolutely. But there's also so many more people in the sport. Back then you only knew of, a handful of men's open bodybuilders. And on the women's side, it was like nobody at that point.
Mhm.
The sport has grown so much in that way. So obviously with more numbers, there needs to be more opportunities. And just because somebody turns pro doesn't mean they're going to be a competitive pro.
Mhm.
So it's again, like you kind of have to change and evolve with the time and the sport. And I completely agree with you, Sean, when you were just talking a few minutes ago. The first thing I thought of is nobody likes change. I don't like change either. In
Yeah.
5 to 10 years I might be judging what they're changing in bodybuilding and be like, I don't like that. I liked it the way I had it when I competed. But
Right.
at the end of the day, we have to trust that we're moving in a direction that makes sense for the sport, and us complaining about it isn't really gonna do much. We could
Mhm.
give, constructive feedback, but
Yeah.
again, there's a difference between constructive feedback and then, just kind of coming out online and complaining.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes you just have to try things. They may not work, but you have to try, and otherwise you just get stuck. You just get stuck and nothing moves and you're going to backslide, period. There was one comment that I saw that I thought was really on point. I always try to relate bodybuilding to other sports. So it's like, they're talking about the number of pro cards given out. It's like when you relate it to the NFL and the draft, right? There's tons of guys that get drafted every single year into the NFL. That doesn't necessarily mean they're ever going to see playing time. They still got to earn their playing time when they get up there. Yeah, they're in the league now, but that doesn't make them a starting quarterback.
Yeah.
And it's the same scenario here. These girls and guys are getting drafted into the IFBB. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be Olympians, but you still don't cut it off at the knees and don't draft any more athletes into the league. Like that's stupid. Like you need more people coming up.
Yeah, and I mean that's why we always say like enjoy your time in the NPC, because as soon as you get it in the pro league, you're right back down at the bottom and you're kind of
Right.
clawing your way back to the top, which again it adds the thrill of bodybuilding, right? If it was easy, this wouldn't be fun for any of us, but
Mhm.
it also weeds out a good amount of athletes because they kind of tap out at their potential at a certain level for whatever reason. They don't want to train heavy and hard to, put on the amount of tissue, or maybe they don't want to, add that amount of tissue, or they don't want to be enhanced, or whatever the case may be. They kind of, they tap out and then they can't really progress. So, it goes back to, really enjoy your time in the NPC, especially if you're, kind of climbing those ranks. Like that is the most fun part, because as
It
soon
is.
as you get to the pro league, it's a whole nother animal. And not that it can't be fun too, like, of course, but again, like getting into that Olympia status is hard. It's grueling. Like it's not everybody's going to get there. So, enjoy your time, where you're at, just appreciate like where you're at in the journey. And, that's all you could do is kind of focus on that and, continue to work on progressing.
Yeah. Now, also in relation to NFL, one of the things that I think we need more of in the pro league is we need more connection, not just to the athletes themselves, but to this, like to the divisions themselves in general too. And the way I'm trying to couch this is like, I used to love the NFL because I watched, I had team loyalty. Like I'm from New York, so the New York Giants were my team, blah, blah, blah. Then free agency came into play. So then it no longer became about, winning the Super Bowl. It became about how much money can I make? I'm going to go to this team because they're going to give me more money and this, that, the other thing. And people started bouncing around. All of a sudden, that loyalty towards that team just completely dissipated, right? So that's one of the reasons why I stopped watching NFL. I just wasn't into it anymore because there was none of that team camaraderie that kept people, driving towards a goal together. And the same thing is happening in college football too. This is why I'm turned off from college football with NIL and all that coming in. Now it's no longer about winning a national championship. Now it's about how much can I get paid as an 18-year-old athlete, So it goes back to, it becomes about the individual versus becoming about the team. And when we're talking about bodybuilding is a very individual sport. There are no teams. Like we talk about this with being with Fit Body. Like one of the reasons why we like being with Fit Body as a team is because it keeps us connected. It gives us that community aspect. And I've always said that about my business too. That's why CCTS was always such a big success, because it was a community of women that came together and supported each other through an individual sport, right? So we don't have anything like that in the NPC and the IFBB. There's no kind of team loyalty. It's all every man for themselves in every division across the board. So, I was sitting there talking with Dan about this. Is like, well, how could we do something where we could create almost like a team loyalty kind of thing? And we started spitballing and thinking about like creating like almost like an Olympic trials for the Olympia, right? Where we have like a team USA, a team Brazil, a team UK, a team for every country has their own team. Then they send their representatives together in to compete for the Olympia trials and then go to the Olympia from there. Because one of the biggest complaints right now with the Olympia, as you know, is there are a shit ton of athletes. It's like, and I'm really not looking forward to sitting through an hour and a half of prejudging for every single division just for individuals. We've talked about this before. It's long, and I'm sorry, as much as I love bikini, it's boring watching all those individuals. It just is. That's not where the judging takes place. The judging takes place during the comparisons. So there's a lot of this that can just be kind of eliminated, right? So going back to the country, like teams and stuff like that, I feel like that could be a really fun way to create kind of a team camaraderie thing around it, and even whittle down the number of competitors that end up at the Olympia. So, you'd have to work out the specifics, but one of the things I was thinking is like, say you've got, you still, if you win a show that qualifies you for the trials, right? So say the USA has 20 bikini girls that qualify. Well, then they all go against each other, and for every 10 competitors, there's 2 representatives or something. So instead of having 20 girls, you end up with 4 that go to the Olympia. And you do that across the board for every country. So if a country has 10 girls that qualify, they get 2 representatives. You know what I mean? Like a 20% kind of thing. And again, this is just spitballing. These numbers may not be the right thing. Or like, say you've got a country where you're the only one that qualified from that country. Well, you automatically get into the Olympia. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I guess I appreciate that idea. From a athlete standpoint, I feel like if you're a team and then only sending a certain amount of representatives to actually step on the stage, I think that might not go over well with every athlete, because if you
Of course, but that's how the Olympics are
too.
too. That's how the
Yeah.
Olympics are too. That's what I'm saying. I'm like, you model it after the same thing that you do with the Olympics. The Olympics, they have the Olympic trials. It's the same thing here. So if you have more competitors that are qualified, then you get more representatives.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just saying from like an athlete perspective, like if I made it, but then wasn't able to step on the stage, like I would be upset about that for sure. So obviously it's a great idea. Like there's kinks that would need to be involved. Like I definitely agree. Like if there would be some sort of way to like create like a team aspect or more camaraderie, like obviously that's better, for the sport. I don't mind that it's an individual sport at all. Actually, just personally, I kind of like that I have to rely on myself and myself only, and then I feel like I get the team aspect of Fit Body Fusion, but yeah, I mean, I definitely there has to be something that has to be done about the number of athletes at the Olympia. I think at some point, I know that there was a post that went up where they were like, do we think that they should remove individuals, in prejudging and then only the top 10, do it at finals, which as an athlete, I think that's a great idea.
Mhm.
I know not everybody does. I know the girls that like love their posing routine or the best posers is like, no, I want to do my individual at prejudging,
Yeah.
which I totally get. But like, again, we're trying not to be in prejudging for 6 to 10 hours.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I think that would be the better for, as far as like the number of athletes on stage, if we're, to be expected that there's going to be upwards of 70 athletes in the Bikini Olympia, like there has to be something that has to be done because it's just a brutal, brutal day. And there's just no camaraderie, between the athletes unless you make it yourself.
Yep. And the other part of that too is you got the athlete aspect of it too, but the other thing that I was thinking about too is the fan experience as well. So, like as we've said, like we don't want to sit there and watch all that prejudging, right? So, going back to it gives it gives the spectators something as buy-in as well. This is something we've talked about with even just the point system that we used to have. We used to have the point system, which made it fun. Made the
I miss
strategy
the
fun.
points. I miss the
Yeah.
points.
Yeah, and we don't have that anymore. It's either like it's just so basic and so simple. It's like, okay, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the best solution, right? So you got to make something that's interesting, like having brackets and things like that, and people go up against each other head-to-head competitions and things like that to make it interesting. Again, I go back to other sports and how they do it. You go to CrossFit, it's the same thing. They do these kinds of brackets where they compete against each other, and like at the end of the day, you end up with your top 5 athletes or whatever, and then you've got your alternates, that come in if something happens to those top 5 athletes that compete against each other. So there just needs to be something that makes it more interesting for the spectators. One of the things that I saw as far as like buzz on social media was after USA's about how expensive it was to go, like for tickets and for backstage tickets and things like that. People were complaining about how much they had to spend as like coaches and stuff like that. And I'm like, the reason why they're doing that is because they have nobody coming in as spectators buying tickets to watch the show.
Correct.
That's why.
Yep.
So if we could figure out a way to make this a more interesting sport for people that are not like on the stage or have athletes in it or whatever, then that could absolutely help with the revenue aspect of it. It could give us a lot more reasons and ways to bring more money and more eyeballs into the sport.
Well, and that's another thing too that promoters, I guess, don't necessarily think about is like it's very expensive for the athlete to go to a national show. It's upwards of $4,000, between your coaching, your supplements, and then the actual travel to be there. It's a lot of money, and for people that are, going to show to show to show, I remember the amount off the top of my head that I spent my first, pro season and, to get
Yeah.
turn pro and then go to those it's a lot of money.
Yep.
And now these promoters are doing 2-day shows where, the athlete, competes on Saturday and then maybe they do the natural show on Sunday. And then as a coach, now I'm spending more money on, 2 backstage passes, which are upwards of $150 to $350, depending on the
It's
show
400 at USA's.
for 2 days. So times that by 2, another 9 in a hotel. And it's getting extremely expensive in an economy that's not doing the best right now. So like
Absolutely.
there has to, of course, ticket sales are going to go down. So, I think there needs to be more of like, again, like that athlete centered focus of like, how can we make this really, really good for the athletes so then they can bring family members to buy tickets. Like that's where like the family hasn't forked out $4,000 in coaching fees and things like that. So if they're spending, $500 to go see their loved one compete in the day, it's not really that big of a deal at that point to them. Right. So that's where I just feel like the promoters need to be much more athlete focused. And that's why I try to put my athletes in shows where I know the promoter is athlete focused so that knowing how much they spent to be at the show, they feel like they're getting the experience out of it that they deserve. Because there's nothing worse than knowing that your athlete spent a couple grand to be there and it was a horrible show day. It was long, the judging wasn't correct, they didn't give anything in goodie bags, they were late, whatever that looks like, it sucks, when you know an athlete and what they did to be there, and it just wasn't what they expected or what they deserve, quite honestly.
Well, and that brings up another point too. I really think there needs to be promoter training. Relating this to how we do it at Fit Body as coaches, right? Like, we're all independent contractors, we're not employees, right? Well, the same thing when we're talking about show promoters. They're paying a sanction fee, but with that, there should be some sort of training for those promoters to be able to know how to promote and put on a show properly.
Yeah, like a standard.
Correct. There needs to be some kind of training, something, where these promoters have to go and attend and things like that, so that they know how to structure their show. They know how to advertise for their show. They know where to put their marketing dollars, things like that. I mean, literally can just go through a course in a weekend or something like that, so that they can put their show together correctly for this exact reason right here.
Yeah, and I agree. Like there's too many shows, and some of them are just really small shows, which not to say that, they shouldn't have them or not, but I definitely think that a big part of this is just how many shows there are. And then again, if an athlete chooses a show in the middle of Omaha, it's not going to be the same experience or fun or, giving back to them as it would be Chris Mines in Center Podium, right? So then that athlete goes and does their first show and it's this lackluster experience. Are they going to come back to the sport? Right? Like, they didn't have fun. They didn't feel like they were, respected or, honored as an athlete. And they didn't really maybe love the process. What's going to force them to come back? But if that athlete suffered, 18 to 20 weeks in prep, they get to their show day, it's fun, they're getting goodie bags, everything's on time, they're having fun backstage, they feel supported, then they're going to be more like, okay, I could do the 18, 20 weeks to have a day like that again.
Yeah.
And so I agree with you. I think there needs to be some sort of standard of promoters of like the bare minimum. Like, if you can't do X, Y, Z, don't put on a show.
Right. Yep. Well, and I agree too, like, even again, relating it back to being a coach with Fit Body, it's like every coach that comes in, there's going to be a learning curve. You're going to get better as a coach as you go along. Same scenario here. The promoters will get better as promoters as they go along, but they need that support system. They need that way of talking to other promoters to help them through these problems, versus a lot of promoters butt heads all the time because it's my money against your money. Instead, you need to work together as a whole. We do that a lot with Fit Body as coaches. We all day, every day, that coaches chat is going back and forth, asking questions. We're supporting each other. If the promoters could do that too, I mean, that would exponentially increase the quality of these shows.
Yeah. And you do see some promoters that are kind of linking up and, sharing finances and responsibilities. And like, just like coaches, like two heads are better than one. You have two different promoters with two different backgrounds, with two different ideas, males and females. So like the male is, working on like how to make like classic physique and men's physique feel supported. And the girl's like, oh, they need this for their tan. About like, it just kind of creates this really solid, encased idea. And it just goes back to what we were saying, like, as a team, things work better, when you feel like you have that support financially or, mentally, running a show is extremely difficult. Drew and I have looked into it. It is one of our goals, in the next 10 to 15 years is to have our own show. It's extremely expensive. It is a ton of time and effort. So I really respect the promoters that have more than one show per year, because just putting on one show it's an extreme process.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is from me promoting CCTS. I'm like, it's not easy. Any kind of event like that is not easy. And when you don't have support behind you, it's even worse.
Yeah.
And I really do feel like if we could get away from this whole us versus them mentality, which is a lot of bodybuilding. I mean, it's kind of natural because it's a one individual sport. It's natural to have that me against you kind of mentality going on. But if we get around that and just realize that we're, like you said, we're stronger together, it would be so much better. So much better. And that's another way for the NPC IFBB to have control over their quality of product. but also increase revenue. I'm like, if your promoters are all doing better, the organization itself is going to do better. I mean, it just goes hand in hand. If you're lifting them up, they're going to lift you up, period. It's going to just keep going like that. Or like what we're seeing on social media all the time, where people are just dogging each other all the time, just going to keep digging you deeper and digging you deeper and digging you deeper.
Yeah, that's what I see is like I just see more of like this division between
Yes.
athletes or between promoters or between federations, and the division causes such friction, and it doesn't make you want to be a part of it.
That's
From an
right.
outsider looking in, like I would be confused as a first time athlete if I'm like, starting to follow the sport and I'm seeing, athletes going after each other and,
Right.
federations, saying I'm better, and I would be confused. Well, which one is better? It just makes it very confusing. And like when we're all you don't all have to get along, but you can all respect each other, and that's the biggest thing is like we don't all have to like each other. There's so many different people and personalities in this sport, but we can still all respect each other and show
100%.
up and, as especially as pro athletes, like just represent our federation and our division in a professional manner.
100%. And there's something to be said, like there's the professionalism, but there's also room for various opinions, right? I think some
Absolutely.
people are afraid to speak out. People are afraid to say what they're thinking and things like that because they don't want the negative backlash. But we've talked about this before. I've said this before in business. If both of you think the same way, then one of you is not necessary. I mean, that's just the bottom line. You need to have variances of opinions and ideas and viewpoints, things like that. Because when you bring them all together and you have those discussions, you come out of it with a better solution versus, again, every person being an island unto itself. You don't know what the other person is doing. Like you can just assume what that promoter is doing. But if you guys come together and work together, yeah, you're going to have differences of opinions. You're going to argue. You're going to have those spirited discussions. But at the end of the day, you're going to come out of it with a better solution for both of you.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the thing is like people, it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Right.
And I told you guys like when I went to Pittsburgh to visit the Manions before the Arnold, like I had a very vulnerable conversation with Tyler, and it was very well receptive. And if I came at him or was upset or something like that, it wouldn't have been received as well. But because
Right.
I came from a place of curiosity and expressing myself and, from more of a vulnerable position, it was received extremely well, so it's
Mhm.
not what you say, it's how you say it and how you go about it. I think social media has just really, that's one of the things that has given us, which is very negative. I don't think that a lot of the times, Nikki and I talk about this a lot, that like we perceive going to someone and sharing something with them that we don't like or that we need changed is confrontation, and
Right.
it's not. It's just
Right.
communication. It
Right.
doesn't have to be an argument. It doesn't have to be hateful. It's just communicating, but we don't know how to communicate anymore. You know what I mean? Like my generation and lower doesn't even know how to pick up the phone and order a pizza if it can't be done online. So
Yep.
I think that's like kind of, we're in this just weird era where everything, or people feel like everything just needs to be online and out there and dirty laundry everywhere, and it's not. Like you could still
Yeah.
pick up the phone and have a private conversation with someone. You don't have to call them out in front of everybody online through social media to get to them over here. Just pick up the phone and call them.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and like you said, I think a lot of it is clickbaity too. It's like the
Yeah,
the kind of language that people use, they do it to get engagement versus doing it to actually find solutions and to talk through things
you're
and
100% right.
communicate, you
Content.
know?
This is content. This is content. I'm like, our life is not content. Our
Right.
life is life.
That's
Like,
right.
be present.
Yeah. And the funny part about it is that all of that's online, and most of the time when you get that person one on one, they don't act like that at all.
More
It's
than
like, okay,
likely, more
yeah,
than
it's like,
likely
okay, we
that
can have like
than the latter.
yeah, we can have a real conversation in real life, you know what I mean? And it's like, why do you have to be such a dick online? There's no reason for that. There's literally no reason for that. Like, and it ends up souring the experience in person too, regardless if that person's a good person or they're not. You still are on guard when you're talking to them all the time because of the way that they're going to respond online.
Yeah,
It's like,
100%.
Like, okay. But also, you brought up a good idea as far as kind of getting more eyeballs on the sport and stuff like that too. Is like a Netflix documentary or something like that, doing something where you are actually following the athletes, following the coaches, following the promoters, following the team for the Olympia that's putting the show on and things like that. We don't have anything like that going on. And if we did, I think people would be more interested. I'll just be frank with you. Bodybuilding is a boring sport. Like unless you know what you're looking at, like nobody, like even people that are in it don't know what they're looking at. It's like they don't understand the criteria. They don't understand any of that kind of stuff. So you have to bring something to them where you can meet people where they're at, and they can kind of get a some sort of buy-in to it, right? Where whether it's they relate to an athlete, or they relate to a coach, or they relate to a promoter, or maybe they relate to the business aspect of it, but something where you can bring it down to their level that makes it interesting to them.
Yeah, I mean, and anytime that I post, for my YouTube account or for my content, what do you guys want to see? Everybody wants to see behind the scenes. Everybody
Yeah.
wants to know
Yeah.
what you do
Mhm.
outside of stepping on stage. And so, with all these Netflix documentaries, with football and things like that, I love those. I don't care about football at all, but I love when they post on
Agreed.
Netflix where you're following the athlete and you see the day to the day. You see them
Yep.
with their family, and then you buy in on them on a personal level, and then you see their recovery and what that looks like, and how they're taking what happened on Sunday and applying it to the field that week. Like, it gives you that personal connection and that buy-in to people. And so why don't we have some sort of documentary? I know they filmed last year at the 60th Olympia, and they're supposed to be coming out with some sort of documentary and things like that. But why not create a series where you're following these top athletes that are winning at the Olympia, or trying to crack on that door, and creating more of that personal connection? Because that's what everybody wants, right? That's what social media is at the end of the day. We're all interested in everybody's intrapersonal relationships in life and the people that we care about. So I think that when you have buy-in on the athlete of not just going, that's my favorite athlete with her beautiful suit and her posing, but like knowing, like, oh, that's my favorite athlete because I love that she's a mother and what she's
Yeah.
able to do, and I identify with her, what she does here, and like it keeps fans coming back for more.
Yeah, and I think like there's some athletes that do that really well on their own. Like I think that's one of the reasons why CBOM is so popular, why Nick Walker is so popular, and things like why Jay Cutler is still so popular. A decade after he stopped competing, it's because you do see a glimpse into their real life. You get to know them, and you think that you know them. I mean, clearly you don't really know them. That's a discussion I actually had to have with one of my followers yesterday. I'm like, you actually don't know me. I'm like, you know what I tell you about me. That's it. You know what I mean? But the point is that you do feel like you are connected to that person. You do feel like you said, you have buy-in all now of a sudden. Now you don't necessarily care what the criteria points are. You may not want to get that nuanced into bodybuilding, but you care about how that person ends up on stage, or you care about their results for the year, that kind of thing. And like you said, that's why people reach out to you and want the behind the scenes stuff, because they want to have connection to you, not to you as the athlete, but to you. There's a
Right.
difference.
Yeah. And I mean, I would say like everybody's like favorite top athletes, like those are the athletes that are putting out good
That's
content,
right.
which makes it a really sticky situation as an athlete. I don't want to film every week. I don't want to share everything about my life on social media, but when I do, then my followers increase. And as a professional athlete, like that's how you get sponsorship deals and things like that. So it's a really tough road to walk as an athlete, but obviously the ones that are sharing the most, those are the ones that have the biggest fan base, because the athlete's putting themselves out there, and then the fan has buy-in.
Hmm.
So it's just a really very tricky spot in when you're
Hmm.
in that position of like, what do you share, what do you not? And also, to your point, Sean, like, we're only putting out there what we want people to see. There's very few people that put everything out there, and a lot of people are putting on like 9 out of 10 people, I would say, are putting out there the good stuff and not
Right.
necessarily what's going on behind the scenes, and kind of almost glamorizing prep, if you will. Like, because who wants to film themselves, suffering, or, going
Yeah.
through a tough day, or like the days where you are super hungry and you feel like you just want to sit on the couch and do nothing? Like, why am I going to film that? So it glamorizes the sport almost in a way. And then when people get to that point of suffering themselves, they're like, well, I didn't see my favorite bodybuilder go through this. Is this
Yeah.
normal? Is it right? So it just creates some confusion too.
Yeah.
But as an athlete, a professional athlete, I do think there has to be it. I guess if you want to be successful fan base wise, there has to be kind of like that balance. And as the athlete, you have to ask yourself, what are you comfortable sharing or not in
Mhm.
order to kind of get that fan base, But I do think that it's almost I say this term loosely, responsibility for us as athletes, the professional athletes, to bring more people to the sport that we love
Mhm.
so much and we want to give back to.
Yeah, well, and you're right. It's a catch-22 because I know for myself, the more private I get, the more private I want to be, right? Like I've been that way this past year. I haven't shared as much as I typically do. And I'm like, I don't like I have to force myself to share stuff now,
Yeah.
because I'm like, I just don't want to, and I'm like, I'm good. But I realize also that my business depends on me sharing. So I'm like, I also realize I have to do that, but I kind of don't want to personally. So it is trying to find that balance. It's difficult. It's difficult, but that's everything right now. If you're in the public sphere, it's not just our sport, it's everything, like celebrities, influencers, everything. Like you have to share stuff or your actual revenue suffers, and so that's something. Just the sport itself, the revenue suffers if you don't share. Like that's a great example of what's happening, I think, right now with the Olympia. Nobody's sharing anything, so guess what, those tickets are still sitting there waiting to be purchased for finals on Saturday night, when typically that place is sold out within a couple of days when they open up ticket sales.
Yeah, totally. I'm just sitting here thinking about Drew too. Like Drew is one of the most amazing coaches ever. I guess I'm biased, but I mean his track record speaks for itself, but the man
Yeah.
doesn't post on social media. So like in the beginning when he was, coaching and Jamie was trying to like send him good apps, the athletes were like, I don't necessarily want to work with him. He doesn't have anything posted on social media. And I'm
Yeah.
like, man, if you only knew this man's brain, like he doesn't post on social media because he can't even sit down and write a caption because he's,
Yeah.
in all these loopholes of how he wants to write a caption,
Yep.
So people are so, judgmental now on like what's on your social media. So like as coaches, we have to be very, open to what we're posting online, knowing that a potential athlete is going to be looking at our social media to see if we're the right coach for them.
Mm-hmm.
Nikki Ligorio, my Drew and myself are mentoring her right now. She's a newer coach of Fit Body Fusion. The athletes that are with her are thrilled. She coaches just like, us, but she doesn't have a lot of content on there yet because she is a newer coach, but she's coaching the same way as Drew and I,
Yep.
so it's just very difficult. It's just like that fine line, so you have to, social media is just really, really big right now. And if you're not posting, and not creating that content, I think that's where a lot of things are suffering,
Yeah.
or there's negative content coming out there and it's just making people, turn that blind eye. But I do think that right now where we're at with the Olympia, I just don't feel like there's a lot out there that
It's
people can
not.
reproduce and talk about, so nobody's getting excited yet. I mean, we still have some time to kind of recoup things, but then it goes back to what we were also just talking about. Like Olympia tickets are so expensive. They're even more expensive this year. I have family that's coming out, this year, and I'm telling them just all get in a hotel room, and watch the POV. Like there's no reason for my family to spend upwards of, $5,000 for seats,
Right. Right.
So it's almost making it harder for
Yeah.
the fans too to come support us.
And it's not, it's one of those sports where you if you have a bad seat, it's not worth being there. You need to be at front row because like it's one of these sports where you have to see the stage in order to appreciate what's going on. Like that's what I said. I was like, I'm not spending $350 for nosebleed seats. I'm like, I'm not gonna be able to see shit anyway. I'm like, what's the point? Like, I want to
Yeah.
be up close, and if I can't be up close, I'm not going to. It
Yeah.
doesn't make sense.
I had night seats in the mezzanine last year and I was watching the screen the entire time. And I
Mm-hmm.
looked at Nikki and Adair and I'm like, we should have just ordered food in and watched this like
Yes.
in our pajamas.
Yes. I mean, that's what
Because
we've done.
I have to look at the screen anyway.
That's what we've done every year. Last year they had the watch party at Zook, which was nice, but
Yeah.
even at that, like the screen quality and the live stream quality was shit. So
Right.
we pretty much talked the whole time and we didn't even watch it. But typically that's what we do. We go into one person's hotel room, we order the live stream, and we all watch it together. And we get DoorDash. We just sit and watch. Even in Vegas, like we're literally in Vegas in a hotel room watching when the
Exactly.
finals are going on downstairs.
Yeah. And then when finals are over, go downstairs and
Yeah.
Resilience World, everybody's going to be right there.
Right. That's right. So, like there's certain things, like the one thing I am happy about, like I mentioned this year, is they have the Elite Expo Pass, which is nice. I did get one of those. So it's like, I don't know, I think it's $275 or something like that. That gives you early access and access to the seated area for prejudging, which is great. That's what I want. That's where all the judging takes place, and that's good for me. Like I don't need any of this other stuff. which goes back to why they need to sit down and brainstorm to make this something worth going to as well.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. Like, if it's going to be that expensive, like, you want to feel like you're buying something into that you really want to be at and that you're getting to see that favorite athlete of
Yeah.
yours, you know, but it's really expensive. So I totally
Yes.
understand why the sales are down. I'm not buying them, you
Right.
know?
No, absolutely.
So I understand, I get it. And then goes back to your point that you just made a couple minutes ago about the, you know, the pay-per-view. Like, if you know that the majority of the people are going to be buying pay-per-view and not ticket seats, you need to make sure that pay-per-view is crisp, spot on. Like, that should be the best pay-per-view of the year.
This is something like I never really understood, like how the production quality for the Olympia for the pay-per-view is so bad, because like every other one is great. Like, you know, the Arnold pay-per-view is amazing. Like amazing quality. You know, like how are we in 2025 and we can't get this right yet? You
Yeah.
know, like how is this a thing? Like it like literally ESPN does this every day, all day, 24/7. How can we not get one stream to work correctly? You know?
Yeah, at the Super Bowl of our sport.
Right.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and then I remember last year people were saying like, you know, oh, when you went up for your individual, like it cut out, or you went up for your individual and it wasn't a straight on shot. They were still had you on like the side of the stage and I couldn't see you. And I'm like, well, that
Yeah.
sucks for my
Yeah.
family that we're watching.
Yeah.
You know, like that really stinks.
Yep.
Again, like that's something very controllable that is being missed. And
Well, and I
it's
think,
frustrating.
yeah, this is something else that Dan and I were talking about too. It's like, okay, what if the NPCIB, the Olympia team, the promoters, whatever, if they hire an actual production and marketing team, like a really good firm to just take over all of that stuff, somebody outside of the bodybuilding world that doesn't have any kind of preconceived notions of what we've always done forever, but instead just come at it from like a Hollywood perspective and say like, this is what's going to make this production quality better, more engaging, just better in general, all the way around, from a perspective that we're not so used to hearing all the time or seeing all the time, right? That again, going back to two heads are better than one. Getting somebody else's opinion and somebody else's perspective on it can't be a bad thing if this is what they do, if this is what they're good at, the advertising, the marketing, the production. Lean on them to help them increase the value of our sport.
Yeah, I was just having a conversation at Tampa Pro. I was sitting next to Mitch with Gilco the entire time, and it's he's really trying to help these bigger promoters and coming up with the stage quality so that the photos and the videos and the POV are where they should be. Like, he sat down, for Tampa Pro, Tim Gardner gave him the okay to like redo the stage and the lighting and whatnot. And he sits in his garage leading up into the show and puts all the lighting up that he would on the stage. And he has his wife stand there and he takes photos of her so he can see how it would go with the backdrop, where the lights are. And he's so detailed where he's even trying to cast certain shadows on the physique or highlighting certain things on the physique so that the depth of the muscle starts to pop out. And he was showing me all of this on his phone. Like, he was like, I was really happy with this. I'm not so happy with this. Like, because he cares.
Right.
He gives a shit about the athlete and how they're gonna, how
on his
how
product.
Right. So like finding someone that like understands the sport, understands lighting, understands us and cares about us. That's what it takes. Somebody that's days before the show trying to figure out the correct lighting in their garage, not 24 hours before the show on a Friday night, setting up in the auditorium, hoping that it sticks on Saturday morning.
Mhm.
So just finding people that care,
Yep.
that take their job one step further. And that's what we do at Fit Body Fusion too. We're coaches and we could just, stay right at the scratching surface of coaching and probably be fairly successful. But why we have such a good, like, value behind our coaching and why our retention is so good as coaches is because we keep digging deeper and because we give more, because we care about our athletes.
Yes.
And when people feel cared and when people feel supported, they're not going anywhere.
That's right.
That's so I just feel like people just need to be a little bit less selfish.
Right. Well, I think this also goes into your definition of success too, because I think a lot of people define success as how much profit they get out of something, how much they can squeeze out of something, versus artistic people like Gilco tend to think success is more about the product that you put out versus the revenue that you can squeeze from it. You know what I mean?
But if the product is good,
they go hand in
money's
hand.
gonna come.
That's right. That's right.
And that's why my dad has always told me, if you're working and you're giving out a good product, you will never need to worry about money.
Yeah.
And he's always been right. If your product is good, if you're a good person, if you care, if you're giving, they're gonna come. Referrals are
Right.
gonna come. You could charge more, and your retention is good.
That's right. That's right. You know, and the other part of that too is like, you know, I grew up from an artistic background. You know what I mean? I went to a liberal arts college, all that kind of stuff. So the majority of the people that I've been around have been very artsy type of people, right? Where they view things from not a monetary aspect all the time. So they view things more from a quality of what they're putting out there kind of thing. You know, artsy people tend to be a little bit more on the eccentric side. They tend to not need the materialistic things as much, things like that. So when you're talking about quality like of product and art form, it's very, very different than when you're talking about an actual revenue standpoint. So again, this is why you need the people that are good at the marketing aspect, that are good at all of that. But then you need the production people. You need those people that have their heart and soul put into it to create the best product. And then those people that are good at the money part, then they're the ones that go out there and get the money for it. You know, this is where you need that push pull. And again, I don't think we have that existing in the NPCI right now. And I think we need it. I think we need that.
Yeah, it's almost like, you know, you got to fork out a little bit more money in the beginning of any project
Yeah.
to, you know, gain more and get it back on the back end,
Yes.
you know, and I do think that more hype and, you know, graphics and, you know, I know that they ask us, they just sent out contracts 2 weeks ago. They ask us in our contracts to create a hype video so that way they can start posting them into the Olympia,
Yes.
you know, but then you're relying on the athlete to take the video and, you know, the quality and things like that. So I'm sure a lot of those videos get missed. I know I didn't even do mine last year. I forgot, and I still haven't done mine this year. It's due in 2 weeks. So it's just like more thought, you know, that's why I hired Nikki. You know, Nikki is my personal content creator. She puts the content together. She tells me what to post. You know, she'll create the caption for me. I edit it into my words, or I'll tell her, hey, this is a special one to me. I'm going to create my caption. And she's literally created a brand for me because she's been able to kind of put that behind the scenes. But as an athlete myself and as a coach, I don't have time to do this. So I need somebody to put that together for me. And also too, like you've said before, Sean, it's hard to find a content creator that speaks my language. She knows me. So she knows my style. She knows a certain photo. I'm not going to like that angle, or I'm not going to appreciate that exercise in there. So she knows I want this. Like it's really hard to kind of find those people because again, you're working alongside of them 24/7. So you have to like them. You don't want to feel like you're, you know, going back and overdoing the work that they just did, because then why are you hiring them in the first place? So it's hard to find someone that you feel like you could trust that way. So I'm sure there's, you know, that's a barrier to this, but I do think that if there was one specific person that was there to like 15 weeks out from the Olympia, your job is to create hype. Your job is to, you know, get on the phone with the athletes, you know, call Laura Lee, make sure that she could do, you know, a couple reels for us. And then we post them on these dates. And then you call Ryan Terry and we want him to do this. And then they can use that to, you know, get the athletes excited.
Yep. Well, just like what, you know, Fit Body does with the podcast, there's a centralized location for the podcast. We go there, create the content, and then it gets put out. Do the same thing for the Olympia. There's a centralized location. You go there. I mean, they do the road to the Olympia at the NPC warehouse and all that kind of stuff. So I get that, but I'm just saying, like in general, like content. You can have like a content creation studio where anytime athletes want to come in to shoot content, they can. And then you've got a constant stream of content coming out all the time from your qualified athletes, going out with the same kind of quality production anytime you need it. Just have it available, you know?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's why I like the road to Pittsburgh and road to Olympia with JM. Like that's why people like it, because especially for the athletes that don't have a YouTube or don't post, it's like the one interview that they get where JM's like, hey, how's your prep going? What are you doing? And it kind of gives them like that, you know, that background. And that is a part of what the Olympia asks us to kind of do in a 60-second video, is like, tell us how your prep's going and, you know, try to get people, you know, hyped for the Olympia. But again, like you just got to make sure you're getting all of that good content, and it's hard to do it by yourself.
Yeah. And then again, going back to, you have one person in charge of booking everybody to come in and do all of that. I mean, that's how every media place works. You know, that's how every single place where, like, if you got ESPN, they're going in, they're bringing people in for their interviews every single day. You have some place set up where you can do that. You can create your hype for whatever it is that you're doing, the Olympia, the Arnold, the road to Pittsburgh, whatever. You have that one place, that one centralized location where you bring people in for it. And the more that you invest into that, the more revenue that comes off of it, the more marketing that goes out there, the more eyeballs that are on it, the more it pays for itself too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even too, an idea is like, what I do like about Chris Mines is, with that photo shoot that he's going to take on Sunday, that's his content now for the rest of the
Oh
year.
yeah.
So he just uses the content from the show on Saturday and from the boats on Sunday. And that's his content through the entire season to get him to next year's Tahoe. Like,
That's right.
so, at last year's Olympia, if you have like a media marketing team there where you're telling certain athletes to come at a certain time to interview them or to do a reel when they're, training or things like that, then you just use that content through the year to get you to the next Olympia. But obviously there's no one specific person that's doing that. And that's what Fit Body Fusion, the podcast, does too. Jamie and Greg haven't filmed a podcast in months being on the road, but when we're home, she does a podcast 2-3 times a week, knowing that we have now a bank of them while we're on the road all the time, so it's like you have to, content wise, you have to build up a bank, knowing that there's going to be weeks where you can't create content. Like I'm in a content lull right now. I've barely seen Nikki, I'm on the road 4 days out of the week at this point, but when I'm home, I could create content all week if I needed to, but it's time, it's effort, and again, like I would not be able to think about it unless Nikki literally has access to my Google Calendar. She literally tells me like, I need you to film this today. And then she'll take that. And then now it's my post on Thursday. You're going to post this reel that you did for me on Monday, so it's a lot. It's a lot of thought. It does take a full-time job. It's one person.
It does. And I was just going to say that. I was like, people don't realize it's like, it's hard to run your business, keep up with your clients, do all the things you got to do, and market for your business too. It's a really hard thing to do. And then in a scenario with the sport, like they need to have a dedicated team doing that all the time. They need to have somebody doing it all the time. They need to have that marketing manager. They need a social media manager. They need to have the content creation team. They need to have all of that.
Yeah. I mean, like as a business owner, I'm sure you could relate, Sean, like before you really learn how to like delegate or can afford to hire help, you're constantly in a state of like offense or defense within your business. Like, and most of the time you're in defensive mode. Like when you get to a point where like you're not really making any money, but you're not losing any money, you're almost on the defense to make sure you stay there. And because you're reactionary. Yeah. And you're so tapped out with what you can do just to stay there that you can't go on the offense and try to build more money or, build more, programs or create more money because you're just so obsessed with just defending what you have and not losing, so it's this odd point of where like you need the business to grow so that you can delegate and hire someone to help you so that you can go on the offensive. And when Drew and I started to do this, like we were noticing that push was like fine, but it wasn't really growing. And then it didn't start growing until we actually started hiring employees, and we had to fork out money from our own pocket for a good amount of time to pay these employees, but to also then go on the offense to try to be able to open ourselves up to create more sales. And then eventually it worked out. Now I don't have to put money into the business. The business is paying for itself and all of its employees, and I'm making more money through push, right? So, but you have to be able to, suffer for a little while to get to that next level. And that's a tough decision as a business owner because you're good and you're comfortable and you have your little nest egg. But what would happen if you took something off of your plate, gave that to somebody else, and then, push forward for something more, and with any project, you're going to have some sort of risk, and you're probably going to lose at first, but it's an investment.
Yep. It's the working in your business versus working on your business. They're two very different things. And some people aren't good at both of them. Like I'll use my dad as an example. He had his own construction business for a long time. He is very, very good at construction. He is very, very bad at being a business person. So like he had the business for a long time, but it was not profitable because he wasn't good at working on the business. He was good at working in the business. So his sweet spot would have been he should have hired somebody to actually market the business and take care of that side of it so that he could do what he loved. He loved doing the actual work. There's difference between doing the actual work and working on the business. Going back again, using Fit Body as an example, I would much rather sit and coach my athletes than try to go out and run the whole show and market and run the back end and run the software and all this kind of put the programming together and all that kind of stuff. Those are two different skill sets. You know, that's why
Yeah.
there's admin people and then there's coaches. There's a reason.
Yeah. I mean, and that was a big decision. Like when Drew and I left our, own coaching business and joined FitBody, is like the biggest blessing was Angela. She now takes over all the kind of, documentation and the back
Yep.
office stuff. And, we're business owners. We understand like the cost to run Trainerize is expensive. Merchant fees is expensive. Marketing is expensive. FitBody takes care of all of that. I would much rather give up a portion of my coaching fees to FitBody and have
100%.
them handle all that. And then I just get to focus on my athletes.
That's right.
It's the most fantastic thing. Like when I was doing it, Drew and I were doing it alone. We're handling all of that.
All of it. Yeah.
And that doesn't make me the best coach because I have to focus on the back end as well, so
Right.
it is, Angela is one of the biggest blessings when you join FitBody Fusion as a coach. Like she is there for all of the little nitty gritty stuff that takes time, that takes away from us being able to truly focus on our athlete and be able to fully absorb into them.
Yep. Absolutely. And I know that from running my own business too. It's like, there's no way that I could do the coaching and the, I guess, advertising and marketing aspect of it, the admin portion of it, and like that too, along with running my own business. As you know, same thing with working with Push and everything like that too. Just it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. And bringing this back full circle with the MPC and IPB, I mean, I think a lot of times they're just working in the business versus on it.
Yeah. And I think too, like the business did grow fast in bodybuilding. We started with that, right? Like there used to be like a handful of bodybuilders and now there's, a good 100 bodybuilders that people know and that are doing really well. And, when the train starts going, sometimes it's really hard to catch up, So, but if we're in this kind of lull period right now where we're, the sport's growing, but maybe at a very slow rate, like now's a really good time to kind of, take a step back and go, okay, what can we do? Like what's something that we can do now, that's going to progress the sport, that's going to take some load off of us or, load off the athletes, now's the time to kind of implement or, think about something like that.
Right. And again, going back to, you just got to try shit sometimes. Like it may not work. It may not be the right solution, but you got to try. Like try something new because, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. It's just not going to happen. You have to try stuff and you're going to fail and things are going to fail and things are not going to work completely. A lot of the stuff that we talked about today, that may be bullshit, but try, give it a shot, see if it works. If it doesn't, cool. Then we'll recap, figure out where it went wrong and try again and eliminate the parts that went wrong. That's how you get better. Just like bodybuilding itself, you eliminate the things that were wrong, you eliminate the judging critiques, and you come back better the next show. It's the same concept. It's not rocket science. You just have to try something new.
Yeah. And the only way that they will continue to pivot and get better is when we give our feedback. But again, it's not what we say, it's how we say it. So if we really feel strongly about something, like I want to empower you guys to like speak up, there's no reason why you can't send a really nice, thoughtful email to the office and say, hey, I just wanted to share this experience with you. Like, I don't know if this is right, wrong, and different, but it rubbed me the wrong way. And I'd like to share it with you, and that we can, as coaches, as business owners, as anybody in the higher, positions, we can only improve if we know how you're feeling, So I do think too that people turn their back when it comes from a really, angry way or more of like a putting down
100%.
way, or again, like, nobody wants to be called out online. I think anybody that, confrontation wise, I know for me, like if somebody blasted me online, I would have just said like, why couldn't you just pick up the phone and call me? We could have just talked about it, so it's if you have something to say, like, don't be silent, just be mindful of how you're going to bring it up. And that's how they're going to get better. And like, if I'm only communicating with them that I don't like something, it's not going to be as prevalent if 5 of us came and said, hey, we don't really like this. This is something that we can change. So, if you really feel strongly about something, speak up, just do it in a really professional way and go
100%
to the source.
Yeah,
See
and
the
like,
source.
and we know that too. Like, I think the two of us, we can understand that kind of thing being business owners too, because it's like we sometimes get so stuck on what we're doing, we forget about how it's perceived by our clients and things along that line. And so, whenever somebody comes to me with a valid concern, and they come at me the correct way as far as how they deliver that message, I'm way more receptive than somebody who just comes at me like, I'm like, okay, like, nah, I'm just gonna completely shut down on this. Like, I'm like,
We
there's,
all
you're,
do. We all would.
yeah.
That's
I mean,
human
there's so
nature.
many examples. There's so many examples I could use.
Yeah. I listen, yeah, you're right. I'll just say that.
I know, right? But it's true though. I like, because I think genuinely, if you care about what you do and you care about the product that you put out there and things like that, you want constructive feedback. You want people to tell you, what they like, what they don't, because I'm going to take that. I'm going to try to improve upon it. I don't necessarily think every single opinion is valid. However, your opinion is your opinion, and I can take that and I can learn something from it. I can glean something from it, whether it's what you want me to glean from it or not. I can glean something from it if I can be receptive towards it.
100%.
Yeah.
All
So
right, I have an athlete at the door. Sorry.
no, you're good. So yeah, so these are our thoughts as far as increasing the sport of bodybuilding, just in general, with everything, popularity, revenue, everything, all the things, experience wise. But don't take it from us. Take it from everybody. All the opinions. So if you guys
Yeah.
have opinions, and thoughts and things that you think might be beneficial for our sport, you can drop them in the comments.
Yes, please do. And any
Yeah.
topic ideas too.
Yes, topic ideas, absolutely, 100%. Positive topic ideas and not negative bullshit.
Not on Behind the Bikini, not our girls.
Right, right. We don't talk. Well, we talk a little bit of shit, but we talk like constructive shit. So
Yes.
there's a difference. So guys, we appreciate you. As always, appreciate you guys listening and participating, and like I said, commenting and all of that stuff too, because we do read everything. We take all of that into account for ourselves as well. And I'm going to let Jordan go get to her athletes over there. We'll get this out to you guys. And this is episode 102. So we're almost at our 2-year mark over here. So like, comment, subscribe as always. And for Behind the Bikini, we are out. Bye guys.
Bye.